Breaking news from WDSU.
After spending 15 years in prison, a Jefferson Parish man is free. DNA evidence exonerated Damon Thibodeau, who was on death row at Angola, serving a sentence for the rape and murder of his 14-year-old cousin.
The man spent 32 years behind bars for a murder he did not commit, and now he is finally being set free.
Susan Mellon is celebrating her freedom tonight after spending 17 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit.
An emotional day in an L.A. courtroom today. A judge threw out the case of a man convicted of 3 rapes he did not commit.
Brothers were released from prison after serving 31 years for a crime they did not commit. One of them had been on death row.
Can you try to briefly describe the daily hell and torture it was being incarcerated for a crime that you did not do, let alone a sexual assault, rape, for over 20 years?
I mean, everybody have their different way of describing Damn, that's a good question, man. One day at a time. I need a moment.
Welcome to Newsbeat, an unconventional examination of conventional wisdom. Newsbeat is produced and distributed by MP Studios, a division of Maury Publishing. Newsbeat. Listen, learn.
Hey everyone, this is Mike Conforti, aka Manny Faces, producer of Newsbeat, here with our editors Chris Tawarski and Rashed Mian. We're glad you could join us here again for another episode of Newsbeat, brought to you by our sister company, Maury Publishing, an inbound marketing agency based in New York that specializes in web design, content marketing, and sales support. You can visit them at maurypublishing.com and tell them the Newsbeat crew sent you. Now, I had a tough time putting this episode together. It's definitely one of the most gut-wrenching and emotional subjects we've tackled so far, but I'm really proud of how it turned out. Chris, you want to bring us into it?
Sure thing. Alan Newton served more than 20 years for a crime he didn't commit. Now, had this occurred in Alabama, he would have received $50,000 for every year of wrongful imprisonment. Instead, Alan Newton was convicted in the state of New York, where exonerees get nothing and are forced to sue the government to receive compensation. Rashed?
We spoke with Alan about the experience of being convicted for a crime he didn't commit and fighting for compensation afterward.
And this touches, from my experience, all races and members of society and nationalities, and nobody's immune to it.
We also interviewed Rebecca Brown, the director of policy of the Innocence Project, who fights for people like Alan.
The day a person is exonerated, it's a big celebration. The cameras are there. Everyone is paying attention. And basically, the next day, everyone is gone.
And there's Emily Bazelon of the New York Times Magazine, who's written about the disparity in compensation statutes.
I wonder how many people know about these rules for compensation, and I wonder if people imagine that it's relatively easy to get some money.
What we learned is that exonerees live through a special kind of hell, fighting for their innocence and then fighting for their lives after prison.
Well, let's hear from those voices, plus a special contribution by hip-hop recording artist Silent Night. This is Exonerated and Broke.
The crime happened on June 23rd, 1984. She said she was abducted, taken to a park, robbed, raped, and sodomized. The guy ran off, and she ran after the guy to get her $15 back. She caught the guy, and the guy gave her $15 back. Then they walked away. She went to catch a cab to go home. This same person came and abducted her again, took her into an abandoned building this time. He raped her again, robbed her again for the same money, and this time he cut her. He cut her in her left eye. I was with my fiance and their family, and we went to see Ghostbusters, and, my fiance testified on my behalf. Her daughter testified on my behalf that I was with them. And because, I had a photograph in the books from, 1979, the year I graduated high school. I got arrested for a fight happened outside the PAL. I was gambling, with a lot of other friends and, money dispute. So when the victim was going through some photographs, I got picked out and I was arrested June 28th. We actually had tickets. We actually had the ticket stubs. So we had, the evidence, where we was in a different borough in Queens County, but they was hell bent on making an arrest, regardless of the circumstances. And, at that time, it wasn't no DNA how it is today. So you couldn't just prove your case, on that facts. And so they wanted to go with what they had. I was found guilty of rape, robbery, and assault in the building. Even when I was trying to prove my innocence for all those years, in regards to, the alibi and, it was wrong. It wasn't till, the advent of DNA testimony came out that it was like, look, if I could find this DNA, I can absolutely prove that I didn't commit this crime. Because it's DNA. The DNA doesn't lie.
Lying down with my wife and child, tired, been a long night, but now I'm chilling, happy, full. We built a nice little life, I'm proud. Bell ringing, it's late though. Door knocking, it's straight though. Y'all stay here, I'ma get it. Probably somebody got locked out the place, Fast forward this whirlwind, now I'm hurled into a cell. Got my girl flipping as well. My whole world slipping, no belt. Feel like I'm sitting right on the rail. How the hell they really gon' think I got it in me? I ain't never heard a damn soul, God forgive me. Plus I got 4 witnesses, really? Cause I'm a prior, cause of my skin. I told you I'm tired, you ask me again. You tell me again, repeat it. If I wanna see my family, I just eat it. Guess I just plead it, cause so far this pleading ain't making a difference. I feel so defeated. How is this legal? How is this real? Yo, everything feels so walls closing in. I know my family and friends know the deal. None of that matters if we being real. I hope my family and friends know the deal. If we gotta fight this, if we gon' appeal. I'm tired, confused, yeah, I signed a confession. But I ain't never fire a weapon. And I ain't never touched no girl, that's a lie, I would die first, not even a question.
DNA is really considered in the forensic community to be the gold standard of forensic technology. So it really is sort of the ultimate truth teller. And the value of that, of course, in a policy setting is that we have sort of an unassailable group of exonerations that we can point to say, these are in fact happening, and we know what the common causes of wrongful conviction are. When people are exonerated and released from prison, and sometimes they are exonerated after they've done their time, proven innocent through post-conviction testing way later, just to clear their names. Once people are exonerated, hopefully they are in a position to be compensated. And I say hopefully because we have learned in state after state that it's incredibly difficult to receive compensation. Each state has to have a compensation framework in order to provide restitution to the wrongfully convicted, and only 32 states presently have compensation statutes. 18 do not. And of those 32 states, I would say a majority of those statutes are woefully inadequate. It's a huge fight to be exonerated in the first place. When you think about it, the burden is really on the defendant in a post-conviction setting to prove their innocence, versus at the trial level where that's flipped.
Not only is it hard, but now you have to find an attorney that have the resources to be able to prosecute and be able to raise the resources that the state can raise, because the state is unlimited.
We're talking about a relatively powerless group of people. These are people who went to prison for something they didn't do. They are trying to get their lives back together, but they're not necessarily going to have the kinds of political connections or clout to be able to convince states to pass laws that respect their ordeal and give them the kinds of resources they need in order to do well when they get out of prison.
So, the day a person is exonerated, it's a big celebration. The cameras are there. Everyone is paying attention. And basically the next day, everyone is gone. And that's not to say that there aren't many people trying to provide social work services and, people attached to different organizations, innocence organizations, doing that work. But the point is that people really have nothing. They don't even have an identification card. They don't necessarily have glasses or prescriptions ready. They don't have anything that they need. Ideally, when somebody is exonerated, they should be attached to immediate subsistence right away, right out of the gate, right? They should have the money to be able to at least survive pending their claim for statutory damages or civil damages. I mean, it just shouldn't be years and years. We know on average people are spending, waiting 2 to 3 years before they get any sort of damages or a civil settlement of any kind.
Not only do I feel like I'm one of the lucky ones that got, compensated so far, but in regards to, states that don't have compensation, that just flatly refuse to do anything in regards to helping people, it's left on people that has goodwill. And so we go back into these other states with the policy staff for the Innocence Project and, speak to these politicians and try to get access to the legislative and advocate like, why don't y'all want compensation? Why do y'all refuse? They attitude a lot of times that these men and women should just be glad that they home. They should just be glad that the system finally worked for them. And the system didn't work. If it really did work, it would finish working by, compensating and passing these laws to help them out.
Years passing, I don't feel no compassion. Try to motivate, tell them check the DNA, but it just ain't happening. Another birthday gathering, another first day of classes, high school dances, touring the campus, praying, waiting for a retrial. Meanwhile, my daughter's 23 now, sweet gal, find a good man, and I can't walk her down the aisle. I miss so much. Maybe I deserve this. I mean, I try to be a good father, but goddamn, I know I ain't perfect. Need a miracle. I ain't giving hope up, long as I'm still here living. Got my faith and I got my time. We can make something happen. It's close, I can feel it. Try to be a realist, but this ain't real. Got me chained up, this ain't free will. Got me banged up in this little ass cell. Talking 2 decades, living in hell. Just when I felt I could no longer stand. Got the best call that I ever could have. Fell to my knees and I raised up my hands. Praise in advance. If it's in the plans, I'll be a free man. I see all my fam, I'll be in my home, I'll be all I can. That's just what happened, it proved that I'm innocent after 25 years of imprisonment.
A man named Glenn Ford went to trial in Louisiana. A black man who did yard work for Isidore Roseman, and he was a jeweler, and he was robbed and shot to death in his own shop. And the trial just had all kinds of problems with it. One of the problems was that at the time, Ford's lawyers had never tried a criminal case, and they were being paid less than $3 an hour to defend him. They didn't know that they could ask for money to pay for experts, so they didn't hire any. And even though Glenn Ford was black, the jury was all white. And at the time, the rules in Louisiana made it, and actually nationally, made it difficult to prove racial discrimination in jury selection. So nobody challenged the all-white composition of the jury. And this was a courtroom in Louisiana that was actually flying the Confederate flag. Glenn Ford was found guilty. He maintained his innocence throughout, but he was sent to death row in Angola, which is a notorious prison in Louisiana. And he spent decades there trying to appeal his conviction and prove his innocence, but it took nearly 30 years before his conviction was overturned.
Mr. Ford, you've waited a lifetime for this moment. How's it feel to be a free man?
Hey, it's still my mind going all kinds of directions, but it feels good.
Do you harbor any resentment?
Yeah, because I was locked up almost 30 years for something I didn't do.
So, in an important sense, Ford finally, 30 years later, got justice. But in another really important sense, he did not receive justice. Ford was given only $20 when he left Angola prison, and so he went to court to ask for compensation for all of those years that he spent in prison.
Being arrested for a crime you didn't commit, given the death sentence, it's one of the worst things anyone can imagine. Do you stay angry the whole time or what?
No, well, you get angry, you be feeling helpless, but I never felt hopeless, just helpless, angry, and don't know which way to go. So I couldn't do nothing but wait.
So Ford was trying to get a total amount of $330,000 for all the years that he spent in prison, but he was not able to receive a single penny.
Glenn Ford here spent nearly 30 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. According to the Innocence Project in New Orleans, Ford spent 29 years, 3 months and 5 days of his life in solitary confinement on death row. An innocent man, years behind bars, spending every waking moment wondering if this would be the week he dies. Well, last year, Ford was exonerated. He had been the longest-serving death row inmate in the U.S. at the time of his release. And just yesterday, Glenn Ford died. He only tasted freedom for a few months after losing his entire adult life.
The reason Glenn Ford had so much trouble getting any kind of compensation for his wrongful conviction and his years in prison is that in Louisiana, as in certain other states, to get compensation from the state when you're exonerated, you have to prove what's called your factual innocence. And Louisiana interprets that to mean that you have to show you didn't commit not only the crime that you were convicted for, but any crime based on the same set of facts. And so in Ford's case, the state attorney general's office, which is the place that handles compensation cases, the state attorney general's office argued that Ford did not have clean hands, meaning he wasn't totally innocent. Because after Isidore Roseman was killed, Ford told the police he knew about the plans for the robbery and pawned some of the stolen jewelry and tried to sell the gun that was used in the murder. Ford's lawyer argued that he cooperated with the police because he implicated the real killer. But they came up with basically these minor crimes that he'd never been charged with and hadn't been able to prove his innocence on. And they used those crimes to deprive him of his eligibility for any kind of monetary compensation from the state.
There are other bars that exist. For instance, in the state of New Jersey, if you pled guilty to the crime for which you were wrongfully convicted, you don't get compensated under the law. And we know from our DNA-based exonerations that 10% of our clients pled guilty to crimes that they didn't commit. I think it's hard to describe the unique horror of wrongful conviction, right? It's almost Kafkaesque. You know, you've spent years and years behind bars for a crime you didn't commit. You come out and there's basically nothing for you. You know, all of these years were robbed from you. Your ability to form a family, your years to professionally develop. You know, you watch your entire cohort of friends go on and get married and have children and get jobs and, you know, get homes. You know, people are now leaving with nothing and they're starting their lives all over. It's basically a second sentence. And so the least that we can do is provide restitution, provide compensation so that people are in a position not just to survive, but to thrive.
Once you get compensated, you can move forward, and you, like I said, you can become a voice, you know, for yourself, for the system, for the things that's still happening out here. But when you're wrongfully convicted and you know it in jail, you don't have time for anything except trying to prove your innocence. It makes it that much harder when you step out the door.
I wonder how many people know about these rules for compensation, and I wonder if people imagine that it's relatively easy to get some money, that it seems obvious if you have been in prison for something that you didn't do, that the state would try to help you afterward. I imagine most people just haven't thought about it at all. But I think that when you confront these laws, which to me seem unjust, it makes you really question how much power the state has over people's lives and the basis for its authority over us. It just seems like such a basic point and one that should be handled quite differently than it is in most parts of the country.
Freedom is bittersweet though. Only been a week home. Already seems so different. I don't mean to be cold, but I'm having trouble sleeping and just breathing. Kinda hard for me to cope. I'm trying to be in beast mode, but my life got repo. Now I'm shook every time I see police roll by. They ain't even gotta have a reason why. Can't find a J.O.B. so I feel like we're gonna end up in the streets, no lie. I don't even have a job history. Who really gonna take a risk on me when I'm damn near 53? Could barely work at Mickey D's. I'm supposed to be grateful. This is what I pray for. Or they made a mistake. Oh, top it off, what they do pay so low? Nah, please, please. Keep your apologies, change your policies. Give me more options, please. You robbed me of my life. I'm not the only one. Now you gotta pay for what you owe to them. It happen to anyone, all walks of life, not just me. The other scary thing is the real killers still out there free.
Newsbeat is produced and distributed by MP Studios, a division of Maury Publishing. The producer of Newsbeat is Michael Conforti. The editor-in-chief of Newsbeat is Christopher Tuwarski. The managing editor of Newsbeat is Rashed Mian. The executive producer of Newsbeat is Jed Morey. Show notes are available on usnewsbeat.com. Subscribe today on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.